Unprecedented in American history. Federal agents searched former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home yesterday. They were reportedly looking for documents taken from the White House.
Well, Trump is now accusing his political enemies of using the Justice Department as a weapon against him. Ephraim Graham has more from the CBN News Desk.
The president said the agents opened a safe in the residence. President Trump, who was in New York at the time, issued a statement that his home was, quote, currently under siege, raided and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. He also called it the weaponization of the justice system.
All of a sudden, on no notice, they sent 20 cars and 30 agents. Sean, I mean, this is just more political persecution of Donald J. Trump.
For months, the government has been in touch with Trump's attorneys. Constitutional attorney Alan Dershowitz told Fox News that a search warrant was unnecessary.
It seems to me that they have violated the rules of the Justice Department. They have gone after both a former president and a future candidate, and they darn well better have smoking gun proof.
Angry protesters gathered outside Mar-a-Lago. The Justice Department had no comment on the search, while President Trump's allies and other Republicans blasted the action. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said if Republicans win Congress this fall, they will investigate the Justice Department. Andrew?
Thank you, Ephraim. Well, CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody joins us now. David, this certainly is unprecedented, as we said. Where do you think the Justice Department could take it from here?
Well, I think all indications here, Andrew, is that indeed the Justice Department is looking for some sort of potential indictment here. I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that if you're going to raid the home of the former president, you better have, as Alan Dershowitz was saying, you better have the goods. And if you don't have the goods, you're in big trouble. So look, you're not going to raid a former president's home without thinking about the end game here. And the end game clearly seems to be an indictment. It also suggests that the attorney general here, Merrick Garland, clearly has the gumption, has the chutzpah, if you will, to do what many Democrats have wanted him to do all along, especially the January 6th committee, in essence saying, go ahead, let's indict this guy. A lot of people didn't think Merrick Garland might do it, but this raid suggests that he just may, and I think that's the big concern. The real question here is, I got to tell you, Andrew, at this point, what did Merrick Garland sign off on exactly? What was the process? What's the TikTok here? How much did the White House know? We know the White House knew something. It doesn't take, like I said, a rocket scientist to figure out that if you're going to invade and raid the home of a former president, that no one at the White House knew. They knew. Come on, we're not stupid. And so did Biden know? We assume Ron Klain, the White House chief of staff, knew. Anyhow, the point is there's a lot more to sift through here for sure.
Well, obviously, the timing doesn't seem coincidental. It's interesting because the president just recently released a video, and not his usual style. It looked to me a little different kind of theme here, hinting he might soon announce candidacy for president in 2024. So a lot of people, of course, naturally think this is just to derail those plans. What kind of impact do you see this having in the next election cycle?
Well, I think it's going to have a huge impact. I think we saw the 2024 election begin, in essence, yesterday, August 8th, 2022. Remember the date. That's the day that American history changed forever from a political standpoint. This has never been done before. And I think what you're going to see, because remember, President Trump just released that video that you're talking about, Andrew, after the raid. And that video, if you go to it, he put it up on Truth Social, and you can probably see it in a lot of different places. It's a very, very different campaign ad. Normally, a campaign ad has music and it has, some, celebration. This was nothing like that. There was rain. You heard raindrops in the background. It was thunder and rain and ominous talk about where we are as a country. This was very, very different than all of Trump's ad. Maybe not the actual rhetoric, but the tone of the ad was very different. So, look, I think personally, if Democrats don't want Trump to sniff the White House ever again, and obviously that's their intention, they want him indicted for sure. But if that's their intention, I've got to tell you, if that's their intention, Andrew, well, then they've blown it. Because I think this gives Donald Trump a glide path more to the nomination than ever before. They're making him out to be a political martyr. I mean, even people that aren't big fans of Trump would say, what in the world are you doing raiding the home of a former president? Once again, it gets back to the key question. Why did they do it? We need answers, and we need answers very quickly from an FBI that most Americans just don't trust right now.
Well, right, David, and even Trump's political opponents know that this does nothing more than just rally his base and, as you said, prop him up even more. And some Republicans who may not have been interested in supporting him before this kind of generates greater passion for them, for the Republican side. So I guess that's what it comes down to. Does the justice system think they have enough? Otherwise, this really backfires.
Well, that's right. And also, it plays right into what Trump has been saying all along. You know, Trump keeps complaining, they're out to get me, they're out to get me, they're out to get me. And then look what happened on August 8, 2022. They raided the home. We're all understanding this, right? They raided a home of the former president of the United States. Forget Trump for a second. If they can raid the former the home of the former president, what does that mean for you and me? I mean, if you think about it, there is a lot of distrust with the FBI right now. And now all of a sudden we find out that 87,000 more IRS agents are going to be hired, if you will, in this new Inflation Reduction Act. Look, a lot of people are putting all of the pieces of the puzzle together, and they're not happy with what's going on. We are at a huge point in American history right now, right today.
David, last question. I wonder if this puts other candidates on pause, other Republicans who are thinking of running for president. Are they going to kind of wait this out a little more to see what goes on with former President Trump here before they make a decision? Are they going to run or not?
No, that's a great, astute observation, Andrew. I think you're right. I think this changes the calculus for a lot of folks. I mean, I think this, in essence, rallies a lot of those candidates to Trump's side. I'm not going to suggest like a Mike Pence or something along those lines, but there's Mike Pompeo, there's other people that are thinking about running. If Trump gets in the race, a lot of them won't run, though I think Pence would run. But the point is that I do believe that this is going to garner more Republican support, even possibly more establishment Republican support for Trump to say, look, this is a bridge too far that Democrats have done. This is a huge deal. Democrats have given Trump the ultimate talking point. The ultimate talking point. I mean, everybody can say, oh, Trump's just being, you know, it's all hyperbole. Oh, Trump says everybody's out to get him. It's all Trump and his ego. Hold on. We have a raid of a former president at his home. That is a major talking point that no one can ignore. It makes Trump to Democrats more dangerous, and to Republicans and MAGA a lot more popular, and possibly the next president of the United States.
All right, David, we always appreciate your analysis. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Andrew.
Well, in other news, 87,000 new agents for the Internal Revenue Service. The Democrats' new spending bill will double the size of the IRS. Let's go back to Ephraim Graham at our CBN News Desk for more. Ephraim?
Andrew, this bill earmarks $80 billion for the IRS, and almost half of it will go to enforcement. As Washington correspondent Tara Merchant reports, that means more audits on American taxpayers.
Congressional Democrats are on the cusp of doubling the size of the Internal Revenue Service. The administration says the plan is aimed at wealthy tax dodgers, but critics charge the changes will also hit the middle class with more audits. The massive expansion includes doubling the IRS's current workforce with 87,000 new workers, employing more people than the Pentagon, State Department, FBI, and Border Patrol combined, with an annual budget increase of about 600%. Republicans are sounding the alarm.
Why? Not to improve taxpayer service. Only 4% of the money goes to improving taxpayer service. This goes to allowing the IRS to harass businesses across this country.
The Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the bill, as amended, is passed.
Expanding the agency is a key part of Democrats' reconciliation package just passed in the Senate.
And I am really confident that the Inflation Reduction Act will endure as one of the defining feats of the 21st century.
According to the Congressional Budget Office, a beefed-up IRS would haul in an estimated $200 billion in revenue over the next 10 years. While advocates applaud the move, some say Biden may end up breaking a campaign promise.
Joe Biden said he would not raise taxes on anybody making under $400,000 a year. And technically, while the bill doesn't call for that, it could have the effect of doing exactly that.
Contrary to Democrats' claims that audits will target millionaires and billionaires, a nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation study shows more than 75% of the money raised from underreported income would likely come from those making less than $200,000. Less than 10% would come from those making more than $500,000.
If you look at the past, the audits disproportionately impact those that are middle class, upper middle class, income earners. Those are the ones that get targeted by this.
Talking about taxes, Democrats claim the bill only raises taxes on corporations, but Republicans charge that middle and lower income earners will be hurt by the tax increase. Estimates are that companies will pass along as much as 31% of the increase to consumers in higher prices. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Turn now to the devastation in Kentucky. President Biden toured flooded areas and pledged federal assistance to help rebuild. Meanwhile, Kentucky's governor says he's leaning on the hope of the gospel. As Brody Carter reports, he's getting some help from CBN's Operation Blessing.
In the book of Joshua, God says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord God is with you wherever you go."
Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear and his wife Brittany say folks are leaning on their faith after the worst flood in 50 years decimated homes and entire towns in the eastern part of the state.
While the body is mortal, the soul is eternal, and to those lost, we will see you again.
Monday, the president and the first lady toured the damage along the governor, sharing their condolences with many who have nothing left.
We're staying, the federal government, along with the state and county, and the city, we're staying until everybody's back to where they were. Not a joke.
President Biden promised to help eastern Kentucky as long as it takes, allocating money to cover 100% of the cost for up to 30 days of search and rescue and debris removal.
I think that storm was caused by the devil. I mean, it looked like a roaring lion coming out of these solids.
Some 15 inches of rain fell over a 5-day period, flooding 8 counties. Rushing water killed at least 37 people, leaving thousands displaced. Helicopters rescued more than 600. CBN's Operation Blessing is on the ground helping families remove debris, stripping damaged drywall, and serving 5,000 meals to residents and local emergency personnel. The ministry has also delivered more than 114,000 pounds of relief supplies like bottled water, emergency meal kits, and Home Depot flood buckets.
No matter how low you can go, there's always hope. There's always a way up, there's always a way out. And if we can do nothing more than serve them some food and a bottle of water, they can see that we care and we love them. And to me, that's what it's all about.
Lee Cantrell and her husband Alvis are one of many families receiving help. This is the 3rd time they've had to start over in more than 50 years while living here.
Operation Blessings has helped us so much, and all the work they're doing, all the kindness they're showing, they went beyond what we would have expected. And we're just blessed to have them here.
The overwhelming feeling of neighbor helping neighbor is now spreading hope in the hardest hit parts of the region.
Love thy neighbor as thyself. That's what you're supposed to do. And that's what you're trying to do. We're your neighbors, and you're our neighbors.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
You are indeed our neighbor. Andrew?
Thank you, Ephraim. You know, seeing governors weeping as they're speaking and victims trying to get through this and volunteers emotional as well. I remember as a reporter going to some of these disaster zones for CBN to cover what Operation Blessing was doing after hurricanes and tornadoes. And a lot of times our Operation Blessing personnel would show up to a family and they really just put a little emotional wall up. They didn't want help. It was such a tough situation. But over the course of hours and the day, as Operation Blessing volunteers begin to help with debris and getting rid of problems in their home, they would open up, weep with us, cry with us, share their heart. And the love of Jesus was brought into their heart and their home in such a difficult time. It was a special experience for me to participate in that. You can be a part of this too. If you would like to support the work and the relief efforts of Operation Blessing to these precious families that are desperate for our help, you can do that. You can call us at 800-700-7000 and just say, I want to be a part of Operation Blessing's Disaster Relief Fund. You can write us at CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia 23463, or again, call us at 800-700-7000. We are helping with debris, helping with mold issues, working with the Home Depot, giving out water, and most importantly, sharing the love of Christ to people who are desperate for tangible help and emotional support. 800-700-7000. Well, America is not as divided as the media would have us think. That's the message behind Republican Senator Tim Scott's new book, America, A Redemption Story, and it's being released today. Recently, White House correspondent Abigail Robertson sat down with Senator Scott to discuss how his personal story, and others like it, demonstrate great hope for unity in America.
Senator Tim Scott has a lifelong dream for a more united America than we've ever seen. Despite current political tensions, Scott remains fervently optimistic that dream will come true in his lifetime.
Unity really is the future for this nation.
Scott writes about how we can achieve this dream in his new memoir, America, A Redemption Story.
The story of redemption is the story of my life, and frankly, I think it's the story of our country. And so the more we focus on what we have in common, the better off we are. But also, the more we recognize that typically pain comes before opportunity and that failure precedes success, the more we are to understand the journey that we're likely to experience and that will confront us in the future.
As the first African American elected to both the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, Scott credits prayer to leading him where he is today.
I find myself living off of the prayer fumes of my grandmother and the prayer seeds of my mom. So I am so thankful that I come from a family that understands the power of prayer.
As an elected official, how have you leaned on your faith while serving in Congress?
One of the most important lessons I learned is a new level, new devil. It's such a truth that you're going to be confronted with situations that are beyond your ability to process everything. But with prayer, you find this calm, consistent presence that the Lord is with you.
In his book, Scott describes how he leaned on that presence during the events of January 6, 2021.
The fear that you could lose your life in the capital of the United States of America was real.
With rioters within earshot, Scott rolled up his sleeves and prepared for a fight.
Finding an escape route and finding ourselves in a big room with all the senators together and listening to the bickering and the yelling. And something just hit me. It's like the Holy Spirit really kind of spoke to my heart that we needed the chaplain to pray for us.
Scott called the room to order and asked Senate Chaplain Barry Black to pray.
As he prayed, you could literally feel the temperature in the room coming down. You could hear the chaos finding order, and you could hear conviction rising in our hearts to go out and finish the day.
Scott tells CBN News he couldn't be more proud of how the nation's leaders came together to finish their work that day. He points to Chaplain Black's weekly bipartisan Senate prayer breakfast and Bible study as a source of life for him on Capitol Hill.
Republicans and Democrats coming together on a Wednesday morning at about 8:30 to share how faith is intersecting with our lives and impacting who we are.
The South Carolina Republican believes America is not as divided as the media portrays.
Consistently, I think media tells a side of the story and never the whole story. And so that's a problem. Media has figured out that you can monetize conflict. That's bad for the American soul.
In his memoir, Scott acknowledges racism is sadly still a reality in America.
You know, one of the things I try to say on a consistent basis is to remind our country, we are not a racist country. It doesn't mean that we don't struggle with the issue of race.
Still, he sees a path toward meaningful change.
The first step towards meaningful change is to recognize the progress we have made. The last 50 years, if you look at the state of South Carolina, where I'm from, the evolution of the Southern heart is palpable.
Scott points to his winning a congressional seat where the Civil War started, defeating the son of Strom Thurmond, who held the office 48 years and opposed both the 1957 and 1964 Civil Rights Act.
Literally, to see the evolution of the Southern heart is to understand that I'm here today because they, all of the constituents in the 1st Congressional District, gave me a chance and judged me by the content of my character and not by the color of my skin. If we would tell the story of progress in America, I think we would be hopeful.
Now, I know you're not going to make any announcement about 2024, but I will ask you this. Is there anything that might lead you to run in 2024?
It's a great question. I would say that it would require the Lord to speak to me in a obvious way for me to make that decision. The thing I've learned in life is the best way to get your next job is to do the best you can in your current job.
For now, Senator Scott remains focused on his 2022 re-election campaign. When asked how he remains hopeful for our country, Scott replied he believes Ephesians 3:20, that God is able to do exceedingly more than we could ever ask or imagine, according to his power at work within us. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thank you, Abigail. Senator Tim Scott's book is called America, A Redemption Story, and you can find it wherever books are sold. You want some encouragement today? Think about Democrats and Republicans once a week gathering together to pray and talk about Scripture. If you need some joy and hope today, consider that. You know, it's in John 17, we see Jesus praying for himself and then his disciples and then us, the people that would follow later. And what he prayed for was not we'd be rich or have miraculous power. It was that we would be unified. So we are so encouraged to see that part of Washington, D.C. Well, I just read a fascinating book. We want to tell you about it. Joe Johnson said that folks told him his story was too far-fetched to believe. Nicknamed the baby of Bataan, he lied to a military recruiter so he could join the Army. He spent his 16th birthday fighting the Japanese in the Philippines. And while his story reads like a movie script, it is true. It's being told in full for the first time in the new book, A Bright and Blinding Sun.
Marcus Brotherton is a New York Times best-selling author. His latest work tells the compelling World War II story of a Memphis teen, Joe Johnson. At just 14 years old, Joe fooled a recruiter and enlisted in the Army. He fought in the Philippines and at 15 became a Japanese prisoner of war for 3 years. Brotherton's newest book, A Bright and Blinding Sun, tells Joe's riveting story of survival, love, and redemption.
All right, Marcus Brotherton joins us in studio now to tell us more of Joe's story. It's kind of like a Louis Zamperini type of story a little bit, but the difference here is, Marcus, at 14, I mean, if you're a parent or grandparent, you need to think about this. 14 years old, Joe enlists in the Army. So what was his childhood like to have him make a decision like that, and how did he get away with this?
Well, Joe's story really starts with a big problem. It's the height of the Great Depression. Money is tight, jobs are scarce. There's a lot of tension in Joe's boyhood home. It was so much so that his father goes looking for work and never comes back again. So Joe is frustrated by this. He's hurt, he feels abandoned, and he goes looking for his father. He finds his father, all is well for a little while later, and then more tension arises. And so Joe, just in sort of his frustration, says, well, fine, maybe I'll just run away and join the Army. Now, this is a bluff. It's not really going to happen. But the more that Joe starts to think about this, he goes, well, that's not such a bad idea. So he steals across town, finds a recruiter's office. Sure enough, join this line, fill out this paperwork, gets lost in the shuffle. Joe is only 14 years old.
14 years old. 14. Of course, never thinking he was going to be in World War II is what ended up happening. So, and I want people to know this is a gritty book. I mean, this is a life of a young man of a boy really, who then winds up among men. He's in a war situation. And when he first arrives in the Philippines, he meets a young girl, and it turns out to be an interesting love story. But tell us about his relationship with Perpetua. This really changed his course a bit.
So my wife and I have a 14-year-old son, and we know just the importance of strong role models in his life. With Joe's life, sometimes he gets those good role models, and other times he doesn't. As part of his more negative experience, some of the guys incite him to go visit a brothel, which he does. Now, certainly we don't condone this behavior, But the cool piece of this story is Joe gets to know this girl, Perpetua is her name, and eventually visits her more than half a dozen times. Only once do they ever consummate the relationship. But Joe is intrigued by the friendship. She's really his only female peer. He cares for her. Truly, he develops real empathy for the girl. He learns she's an orphan, and in that particular subculture, there weren't a whole lot of options for orphans. And eventually devises this plan to help the girl escape her life and enter a new world of better opportunity.
Yeah, so that's one of many parts of this story. But talk about this young teenage boy who finds himself at war and some of the most difficult things he experienced.
Well, Joe is thrust into battle, age 15. It's a horrific battle. He's fighting on Bataan, on Corregidor. It all leads to General Wainwright's surrender. All the American troops, all the Filipino troops are surrendered, largest ever surrender. And so Joe becomes a prisoner of war, age 16, and he is incarcerated by Imperial Japan.
This young kid finds himself, he joins at 14 and now he's a prisoner of war. And I think at one point in the story, he's put in some sort of isolation, almost in a cage, right? And this was a kid who was not a Christian. He wasn't particularly spiritual. But the Lord begins to do something redemptive in his life. You're a former pastor, right? So I know you love redemption stories and how the Lord works in people's life. What happened to him when he was in this cage in isolation?
A very difficult part of the story. We have to remember this really happened. Joe is put in what's called an ISO. It's a small slatted box. A man can't stand. A man can't even sit upright. He has to huddle in a fetal position. He's given no food. Most importantly, he's given no water. Now, you can survive 40, 45 days without any food, but only 3 or 4 days without any water. So Joe knows that no one he has ever known has survived the ISO. And in this state of extreme desperation, now he's not a person of faith, but he begins to pray. And his prayer is fairly simple: God, have mercy. Now that night, that same night, clouds gather and it starts to rain. And Joe is able to stick his head up beneath the boards of this slatted box, and he's able to drink his fill. He survives the experience.
And so he begins a relationship with the Lord begins at that point. So he eventually gets home, but he's got emotional trauma from this, correct? And it's interesting, he lived much of his life, still not a Christ follower necessarily, but what happens when he was an old man, so to speak? Something captured his heart in particular, didn't it?
Yeah, so when Joe comes home, he does struggle with severe PTSD for any number of years. Eventually checks himself into a mental health unit for a while. The counselors there do encourage him to learn how to forgive, to set that burden down. This really begins a lot of the healing in Joe's life. It really all comes to a crux when he's 90 years old. 11th hour decision. He's home one day, flipping channels on his TV, and he comes across the ministry of Dr. Charles Stanley. Yeah. He hears the gospel for the first time. You can go from death to life, spiritually speaking. You can go from darkness to light. And Joe goes, I don't think I've ever made that decision. And right then and there, in the quietness of his living room, he bows his head. He makes it official.
Last question here, because you've written quite a few very successful works about people in the military, veterans, those with grit and perseverance. What are you hoping people most walk away with regarding Joe's life specifically? It's a unique story.
Every life can be lifted. You're never too far away.
And one other question, the fact that his heart, even after so many years, the Lord captured him in a moment he didn't particularly expect. Do you think forgiveness was a part of that? He did forgive a lot of those who put him through such misery, right?
He did. In fact, Joe would never even talk about his captors in a derogatory way. He was truly a changed man.
Well, we thank you for this book. It is a great book. It's gritty, as I said, but the redemption, the forgiveness, and the way God captured his heart is inspirational. You can read more of Joe's story in the new book by Marcus. It's called A Bright and Blinding Sun. It's available nationwide. And again, Marcus, thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And welcome back to the 700 Club for this CBN News Break. The Biden administration is pledging $1 billion in military aid for Ukraine. The administration says this will be their largest delivery of rockets, ammunition, and other arms since the beginning of Russia's invasion. This comes as analysts warn Russia is moving troops and equipment in the direction of southern ports to ward off any Ukrainian counteroffensive. More than 5,000 civilians have been killed in Ukraine and more than 7,000 injured in this war. Tensions between the U.S. and China remain high. Beijing still holding military exercises launched in response to House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to the island. President Biden is downplaying the provocation.
I'm not worried, but I'm concerned that they're moving as much as they are. But I don't think they're going to do anything more.
As Beijing continues the military drills with warplanes and ships performing attack simulations around Taiwan, the Taiwanese foreign minister says life for them goes on as normal, and the best way to deal with China is to show resilience. I want to remind you, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.
Raquel was told it was all her fault. She must not have taken care of herself while she was pregnant. The young mother was devastated to think that she had caused her daughter to be born with a cleft lip. And to make matters worse, Raquel had no money to pay for the surgery to fix it.
The morning Raquel went into labor with her fourth child, her husband, Benildo, ran frantically to get the midwife. By the time he returned, Rachel had given birth to a baby girl. That's when he saw the cleft lip.
I was very sad to see my daughter like this. None of my children had been born with this condition. I had never seen a person born like this.
As Elizabeth grew, Benildo and Raquel decided to introduce her to the relatives.
My mother welcomed us with joy, but my sister said she didn't like my baby because she wasn't pretty like her other nieces.
Raquel went home crying that day. She blamed herself for Elizabeth's condition.
People said it happened because I didn't take care of myself during pregnancy, especially during the full moon. They all say it was my fault. For that reason, I decided not to go outside with her. I even had to stop attending church.
The family had already been struggling to provide for their 3 other children. Benildo earns about $6 a day when he can find work in construction.
I barely had enough to feed my family, much less pay for surgery. I went out and hid behind the house and I started crying.
Sometimes I thought that God was punishing us by making it so hard for our daughter. And we didn't want our baby to suffer as she got older.
When Operation Blessing met with the family, we gave them some good news.
They say they wanted to help my daughter. I was very happy because God heard our prayers.
I thank God because He did not abandon us. Now my daughter will have a normal mouth.
Operation Blessing provided free surgery to repair Elizabeth's cleft lip.
I thank God for my daughter's surgery.
A few weeks after the operation, Elizabeth was able to begin eating solid food, and her mouth looks great.
I thank the people who help Operation Blessing, and I ask God to bless them so they can continue helping more people.
You know, in America, a scenario like that would be repaired immediately. The sad thing is not only is it difficult for the child to eat, and not only are there medical issues when there's a cleft lip and cleft palate, but the society and the way in many countries these children are shunned or rejected is just such a sad thing. It makes the opportunity you and I have to step into that situation and make a difference even more significant. You really are changing a life. And it's not just cosmetic. It's their future. It's the way others see them. It's the ability to get work, to have a family of her own one day. Thank you, 700 Club members, because that's exactly the kind of thing you're doing around the world, and it's one of many things you do. To those of you who haven't yet joined the 700 Club, would you join with the rest of us? You know, there's such a sense of meaning in your life when you're doing something that touches and changes someone else's life so drastically. You join the 700 Club by calling our toll-free number. It's 1-800-700-7000, and for 65 cents cents a day, $20 a month, you can become a 700 Club member. We have several club members you can join at. They'll tell you all about that when you call. Just ask what your opportunities are, because that's what it is. It's an opportunity, and it's a blessing to someone else. I want you to know when you join the 700 Club, also, we have a gift for you. It's Pat's latest teaching called Putting on the Armor of God. It's a teaching from the book of Ephesians. In the day and the hour we live in, don't we all need to know how to effectively put on the armor of God? So you call now, 1-800-700-7000. Just say, I want to join the 700 Club. We'll get your gift out to you right away. Lynn wanted an easy life. She didn't get one. She's been maimed, infected, even operated on, and told afterwards that she still could drop dead at any moment. These trials tested her faith far beyond anything she ever imagined. They also led her to embark on an adventure she never could have dreamed.
Most people don't ask me about my face or what happened. It's usually after a time and conversation that I'll be able to share my story. And I like sharing my story because I want people to hear about how God spared my life. I grew up on the Navajo Reservation in Arizona. As a young girl, I was very shy, and I really didn't ever feel like I had any special talent. I wasn't creative, I wasn't artistic. I didn't even really have any passion or drive of any sort. I think I mostly just wanted life to be easy. I was asking questions like, why aren't I prettier? Why aren't I smarter? Why aren't I more talented? I wasn't happy about how God had made me.
I was about 25 years old at Bible college when I first met Lynn. It just developed pretty naturally, but also pretty quickly to where I decided there was something pretty special about her.
I was back in Colorado with some friends, and we went to a church meeting on a Wednesday evening. And as we were driving home, our car ran into the back of a semi-truck, which didn't have any lights on. My face hit the windshield, and I received a large cut on the side of my face, and my 2 front teeth were knocked out.
She made very light of the accident. I almost didn't go to see her because she said, that's nothing, you know, little cut, a couple broken teeth. She was in the hospital. I walked in, and she looked like Frankenstein. She had a great big gash on her face, all stitched up. Her eyes were red jello. Her front teeth had been knocked out. I was so surprised. You know, I've learned since then that this is how Lynn operates. She's just one tough customer. Seeing her in that condition and realizing this was going to change the way she looked, which I just thought she was beautiful. I think I fell more in love with her. Lynn and I had only known each other for about a year when we got married. We got married on the reservation, had 2 different weddings.
There you go. Whoops. When I was 28 years old, I started having some symptoms that the doctors couldn't figure out.
Daddy, a red light's blinking.
We had 3 young children at the time. The youngest was about 1 year old. She was fatigued, and then she started losing her balance to the point where she would have to feel her way down the hallway to keep from falling over while they were testing her for everything under the sun except a brain tumor, because she was way too young for a brain tumor, is what they said. When they finally did some scans, there it was. I talked to the doctor after the surgery, and he informed me that he had not been able to remove the tumor, but that he had drained a cyst and just sewed her back up.
I went to several specialists, and there was one doctor, and he said, well, you could walk out here today and walk down the sidewalk and drop dead instantly because that tumor could rupture. So you could die at any time. I could die. This could be the end of my life. I'm 28 years old, and it just didn't seem real.
I was very, very scared. I think oddly, I don't think I thought that much about having to take care of 3 kids if she were gone. I'm sure it occurred to me, but I just couldn't imagine life without her.
We're made for eternity. And so instinctively, we think of ourselves as eternal and that we're going to live forever. So as a 28-year-old with a brain tumor and 3 young children and being told that you could drop dead any minute, there's this reality that our life on earth isn't eternal, but God has made us for eternity. After about 3 months, they took another scan and the doctor said, I think we can get this out. And so they went in for a second operation and it was removed.
Sweet trip to the something rather shop.
For the next 20 or so years, we lived a lot of life free from medical issues, but we had no idea what was about to come.
When I was 51 years old, I ended up at the Mayo Clinic because I had a problem in my right jaw that they couldn't figure out what was wrong.
You know, at first it was just a problem with a tooth, and then when maybe it was an infection, and then suddenly it was a pseudotumor, which all that means is they don't know what it is, essentially.
It was inflammation that just wasn't going to turn off. The tissue just disintegrated, and I ended up with a hole in my face. I had a hole clean through about the size of a silver dollar. After a while, I lost 6 teeth because of bone and tissue loss. It went on for months, and we didn't even know if there was going to be some kind of an answer. And so then, of course, you're thinking, how is this going to end up? You know, if this doesn't stop, what can this do? What more can this do? So those were hard days because I just didn't know. So naturally, I'm questioning God about it. And, you know, what's the purpose of this? You want things to mean something. All it seemed like it was doing was just destroying more and more of my face and my jaw tissue. And I didn't really have any answers for that. As I woke up, I would just say, this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. And it's a decision to give each day to the Lord. The healing process took about 1.5 years, so I was always dealing with it. I wore a bandage on my face for over 1 year.
She'd be eating, every once in a while you had to tell her, hey, you're getting food on the outside of your face, you know, because it would go through her cheek. Frankly, her face has been messed up. I mean, you see before and after pictures, she's been messed up. I did not want other people to see the scars. I wanted people to see Lynn, not immediately just react to how she looked.
Generally speaking, people don't ask me about my face. I think it's obvious, you know, and I'm sure they're curious, but people don't usually ask me about it. Having something that really changes your face, it could be a devastating type of thing. I was surrounded by people that loved me, and that helped, but I just knew God was intimately involved in what was going on, and so it was this opportunity to really trust Him and ask Him, you know, how do you want to use this? How is this going to be something that that speaks to other people and speaks about who you are? I could have died because of illness or accident or whatever. The main way that it shaped my faith is just in trusting God with whatever His plan is. I'm not an artistic person. I'm not a terribly creative person. I'm not educated for anything real specific. But I realize that God wants to do more in me and in my life than I can do myself or that I can even think of. I just began to pray a new prayer, and it was more along the line of, Lord, I want to see what you're doing, and I want to come on board. I want to cooperate with what you're doing because it's good, and it's unique, and it's something that I can't even imagine myself.
We were on the reservation doing some work. We were shooting some video for a project that Lynn was doing for a school. I wasn't a video guy. I mean, I had a little tape camera thing, you know, but we were just trying to tell some stories. And we felt God call us, do this for missionaries. So I was 64 years old. Lynn was 58 when we just decided we were going to start making films for missionaries.
We had no experience, we had no background, we had no imagination for it. God gave me assignments that were far beyond anything that I could picture myself doing. It didn't make it easy because it was scary for me. I had to make a decision just to do it, to move forward in faith in Him, that He had put me in a certain place and time, and that was by His design.
We experience God's leading just all the time. I mean, it's a wonderful thing.
As God revealed Himself to me more and more as a creative God that I could partner with, I realized, you know, that yeah, we can say yes to something that is beyond who we are, because it's God's assignment and it's His idea. We would have never thought of filming missionaries and telling their stories if He hadn't first taken us on that journey to learn to trust Him. When you get older, you realize there's not a lot of time left, but you want to use what time you have for whatever God has for you to do. So it actually gets more and more exciting as you get older.
We are far too old, by anybody's estimation, to be doing what we're doing right now. Just because we reach a certain age doesn't mean we quit asking Him, what do you want? Where are you going? How do I go with you there? It's about following Jesus, and He's on the move in some way. So how do you get aligned with Him until you go to heaven?
I love what we get to do. I never would have imagined the life that I live now. Most of my life, what I really wanted was to be comfortable and for things to be easy. My life isn't like that at all now. It's very challenging. It's a lot of work, and I'm so thankful that the Lord allowed me to take this new journey with Him.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps.
Lynn and her husband have found joy in the journey, and it's come because of their willingness to ask God, what do you want to do? What do you want to do in these circumstances? What do you want to do in my life? You know, the Bible gives us this promise as His children. All things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to His purposes. And then there's the prayer that she prayed, you know, the song that she sings upon rising in the middle of her circumstances. This is the day the Lord has made. I will rejoice. I will be glad in it. She's so right, friends. It's a choice, and we get to make it every day. And here's the thing, when we worship Him like that, here's the other promise. God inhabits the praise of His people. Dear ones, don't let your circumstance determine who you are or where you're going. Give it to God. He's got a plan. He's already in your tomorrow. You can trust Him with that, and your journey will be so much more than you ever thought until you get to heaven. We want to thank our friends at Story Partners for Lynn's testimony. If you'd like to see more of their short films, you can visit their website at storypartners.org. Andrew?
I couldn't get past what Lynn was saying. This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice in it, no matter the circumstances. We want to thank you for being with us today, and we want you to join us tomorrow. God bless you.